I move to reconvene the municipal planning and zoning meeting.
I second.
Call for a vote, please.
Whitney Kerr. Aye. Shane Knight.
Aye.
Drew Jackson.
Aye.
Kevin Keener.
All right, we're back. Let me get switched back over here. Do we have another member of the Knight family like to speak? If you will, speak into the microphone for us, please, or close to it.
Hi, my name is Nora Knight. My mom showed me a picture of what they want to build in the grass by my house. My neighbors do not want a parking lot behind their house because when they open the door, it will just be a parking lot full of cars. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. Anybody else in here have a comment or concern while we're waiting on the overflow room?
Did we cut Miss Knight off earlier?
What?
Did we cut you off earlier?
Well, while we're waiting, I'll tell you. I'll take my 3 minutes.
I just didn't want to be rude.
Thank you. So most of you know I actually grew up at 2500 Chuckwaw. Actually came home from the hospital to that house. So this neighborhood's pretty endearing. I moved away for college and then found my way back into this neighborhood. These houses don't actually have a high turnover. The truth is, it's really only when an estate decides to release their family's home that the property is up for sale. The Barnetts, the Barkers, the Sills, Mr. Jimmy Lee, those are to name a few. The first and most obvious thing I'd like to point out is that this east property line of this T-shaped property in question goes under the eave of the Heater's home. So I'm not exactly sure, even as we've determined tonight, how that happened, but to me, it seems that would be enough to make your decision easy. In addition to that, I believe the requirement from C2 to residential is that you have to separate the space with an 8-foot fence. This doesn't propose a separation on the west side of the home, but if you did, I think that fence would actually touch the home to do that. So as a neighbor, I think that's ridiculous. If that isn't enough, I want to point out that this exact piece of land has been presented to you before, as you mentioned, with this exact request to switch to C2. Same dirt, it didn't move, you voted unanimously no. This reminds me of when my kids don't get their way. They say, hey mom, can I have a brownie? My response is no. So they go to the kitchen, they cut it up, they come back to me with a piece of it and say, can I have this brownie? Same brownie, different shape, answer is still no. Eventually, after I say no to all of their attempts repeatedly, they figure it out. No means no. As I just mentioned, the developer has come to you with this request before. In 2017, the request was for 2 large lots that fit the low-density neighborhood to be converted to C2. The commission appropriately agreed with the neighbors and said no to this request. The developer didn't like what you had to say, so he sold off the 2 houses on non-compliant, condensed lots and required the homeowners to sign agreements that they would not speak out against future zoning changes. He intentionally kept this T-shaped, non-conforming lot for himself, only to come back to you now with the justification. This is a non-conforming R1 lot, which he created, by the way, so now it should be C2. Non-conforming lot rules were not created for or intended to accommodate premeditated, non-conforming lot design by developers. If you begin allowing developers now to buy residential lots that are adjacent commercial areas, then sell off pieces at their premeditated convenience using non-conforming lot as their excuse to get what they wanted in the first place, you're creating a precedent that will not only destroy precious neighborhoods like mine, but will destroy neighborhoods all over town. For those of you in the room who haven't been involved In the neighborhood activity for the last 15 years, I'll give you a high-level overview to wrap up. The neighbors have been hoodwinked by developers since 2006. Neighbors have generously negotiated with developers since this town center area was agriculture land, coming to agreements on buffers and beautification and water management in exchange for C2 zoning, with the city officials agreeing to hold the developer accountable. Unfortunately, none of those plans have come to fruition, yet the developer got his C2 zoning. We are no longer interested in making deals. Maybe when we see that the land is platted appropriately, designs are finalized, and civil engineering for the plans that are actually going to be built on this site are stamped by a licensed engineer, will we consider changing our mind? Enough is enough. Protect the integrity of our precious and unique neighborhood. There is nothing else like it in Durant. It was here before the highway came through, and we hope to see it survive as Durant continues to grow. We are reasonable people. We understand that some of this land is highway frontage and appropriately should be commercial. However, our neighbors' backyards don't need to be threatened. Our kids and families riding bikes and running on a residential street don't need to be threatened. The character and value of our neighborhood doesn't need to be threatened, all for the name of a buck to benefit a developer. We are counting on you to make the right decision to oppose PC 2021-05. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't mind if I demask?
Mr. Keener, there was 5 that come over from the other room.
Okay, thank you.
My name is Rick Hamill. I live at 2500 Chuck Wall. That's where Lindsay used to live, believe it or not. My wife and I, we have about 4 acres of land that we're proud of. We keep it well maintained, landscaped, as well as all the rest of my neighbors. In 2017, I know you were here, Mr. Keener, it was brought to my attention that part of that frontage was already C2, to my amazement. I had no idea. And I had found the legal where Mr. Young had said that we met with planning and zoning yesterday, and this is for R1 to C2. Nobody was there in opposition, and it was unanimously passed by planning and zoning to go before the council. And it went before the council and was acted on the next day.
What year was
Which
that?
may be,
Mr. Hamill, do you remember what year that was?
that was 08.
Oh, wait, okay.
That was in 08, and I can give you this information. I went back, and all I had was that small legal. I went back to see what actually happened in planning and zoning, and there were many people there in opposition. And for him to say that there was nobody there in opposition is bewildering. And I mentioned last time that somebody ought to look into that. The other big issue that I want to make, and you guys are well aware of what the different designations, C1, C2, et cetera. C2, a major thoroughfare with through traffic. That's what C2 is. And we have C2 designations in our city. Washington University. It was not intended for Little Chuckwall Street. A little residential street that serves the local community. Like Lindsay said, we've got people walking their dogs. We got children out there. It's wonderful. We have been promised from day one, back to when Bobby Story owned the property, you don't have to worry about us asking egress to Chuckwall. It's not going to happen. And every time something comes up, here we are, and they're asking for egress to Chuckwall. And not only egress to Chuckwall, but a C2 designation. And I think that you would agree with me. Little Chuckwall, it dead ends on Estelle on the West Side Drive on the east side. You make Chuckwall highway commercial, what are you doing in effect? You're making Estelle and Wilson. Whatever traffic is going to get on there, it's going to get out the easiest place it can. And if you've ever been on Estelle now to get onto University, and you know how busy University is, you may be there a while. Now, Just think if that's changed to a C2 designation, and then you're having all this traffic that's trying to get into this business district off of Little Chuckwaw Street. I hope that makes it easier for you to make your decision. Chuckwaw Street should never, ever be considered C2. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Have all of you visited and driven through the area that we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, if anybody hasn't, I have a book that shows some of the pictures of the neighborhood.
I believe we all have, yes.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate you all doing that. And what I have to say is, even if all of these conditions, by the way, I'm Judy Polson, and I live at 2802 Chuckwaw Drive. And if all of these conditions that we've talked about were met, I still think that that you all need to consider the city planning and how our city should be laid out. My husband and I moved here a little over 50 years ago, and we bought a home in a quiet, inside the city neighborhood. And it was quiet, and but there were businesses scattered here and there, because that was before there was really a plan to keep residential in a certain area and businesses in another. We lived in that location for 30 years, and during that time, an apartment complex was built right across the street from us. Well, a few years back, we moved on Chuckwaw Drive in retirement to find another quiet neighborhood, that was close to hospitals and businesses, but was not commercial, with, businesses here and there. So at that time previously, there wasn't a game plan, but now we're in a growth spurt. Our town is growing by leaps and bounds, and I just feel like this is the time that we need to put a stop to residential, and commercial being mixed together, that we do need to keep them separated. And when the gentleman mentioned that they were relocating King's Daughters from the area it is, which is in a neighborhood, and I thought that was probably built, I tried to find out after I heard him say that what year that was built, but I'm thinking it was probably the 60s, I don't know. And that was during the time when there wasn't planning and zoning to keep the businesses, in a certain location. So now, in the position that we're in, I think that would just be going backwards more than 50 years to try to do the same thing that was done before. And I just ask you all to try to consider the direction our town is moving, and try to find I would love for that business to come into town, but on a large piece of property out by itself. I wouldn't think they would want to be crammed into a little tiny area with hardly any outlets and, jammed in. But anyway, that's what I perceive, and I just ask you all to consider. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, I'm Dot Phelps, and we lived at 2500 Chuckwaw Drive for about 25 years, and then built a home at 1717 Marie Drive for 21 years. So, and we own property there now. This piece of property in question has repeatedly been before you, and I know I'm not supposed to repeat, so I'll try not to repeat. But there was a time when people defended their homes and their families with sticks and clubs and stones. We haven't brought those tonight, but we have brought passion and appeal to you to protect us. And God willing, I hope you will. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Rocky Powers, and this is not my first time at this lectern regarding this piece of property. I was shown the notes from apparently when it was rezoned commercial. It had Mr. Powers, that was me, questioned drainage. I spoke far longer than I should have that night, and drainage was one thing I questioned. Drainage was not nearly the only thing I questioned. So that record is insufficient. That record is inaccurate, and it's misleading. The drainage pond we keep talking about, for those who've been around a while, know that was Dyer's Pond. That pond had been there forever, and it's always going to be there, it appears, despite all of the development around there and all the attempts that have been made to change it. Some things stay the way they are despite our best efforts. It's still a pond. It was a pond. You've heard all about the traffic. Most of you know what the traffic's like. Ms. Kerr, you've walked in that area. Mr. Jackson lives in that general vicinity. The Estelle to University is dangerous. The traffic, I understand that the city didn't turn part of Choctaw into a wide boulevard just to make it a nicer city street. They anticipated development on that area before the area ever started developing. The problem is they only went so far, and as we keep saying, when you go west, they didn't go nearly far enough. The traffic is such that we have excessive speed on Choctaw. We already have excessive speed on Wilson. That neighborhood is again a neighborhood of young couples with children, old folks with grandchildren. People walk, people run, kids play, and any business that opens onto Choctaw is going to present an absolute danger and a threat not only to the lifestyles but to the lives of some of the folks who live around here. So I won't continue my repetitious speaking, but I appreciate your consideration very much. Thank you.
Thank you. We have anyone? Looks like we got somebody else coming in. Ms. Polson, next time we're going to be here a long time. If you would want to bring maybe some chocolate chip cookies, that would really make things go a whole lot better. A whole lot better. That's not considered a bribe since we can eat it, so it's not considered that.
Okay, I will.
Positive on that. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak on this, the case before us now? Please.
Evening, I'm Jack Levi. I live at 1969 Marie Drive. My wife and I, we bought the house that we live in now from my in-laws about 11 years ago. My wife grew up there. And, to see it just go from what it is now with the kids. I mean, we see the kids going up and down the street, up on Choctaw, up on Marie, down on Wilson, Estelle. It'd be a shame to have that change. And, what would it be like if the traffic was worse? Like everyone says, they use Choctaw as a deterrent to get away from the light. And with the proposed plan right now, it gets hard to leave our house during the morning for school and things like that. And, congestion is sometimes impossible getting in and out. So, and also, you know, to think about what will happen to our property, the value of our property, what will happen to that. That's also something that needs to be considered. But, you know, we could go, all of us here could go on and on, all night long. But, you know, just listen, be compassionate, and hear what as us as a neighborhood have to say. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Keener, we have one other from the other.
Okay, come on in.
Hello, my name is Michaela Heater. I know y'all don't want repeats, so mine is slightly different. I have lived in Durant my whole life. I'm 27 years old. And I have had literally a dream of living in this neighborhood since I was a little girl. I know that sounds silly, but it was this beautiful neighborhood in Durant that everybody here has had the opportunity to live in. And my husband got out of the military. I talked him into moving back to Durant, Oklahoma. And we move here, and I find this house, and it is literally a dream come true. I have a 4-year-old daughter. My house is the one that is going to be surrounded by everything. I mean, I have people walking by my child's room, right? Where I live, what is supposed to be my comfort, what's supposed to be my dream is being imposed upon. And my neighbors, they have a small child too. Our daughters walk back and forth between our houses to go play and have that idea of being safe and being able to just walk around as you please without having to worry about a parking lot behind my home, people walking between my house. And I really want to help fight to keep my dream and to keep the dream that everybody else here has for that neighborhood of being able to be where we are and just maintain it as the beautiful residential place that it is. And then my other thing I would like to add is we can't even let our kids play outside during the summer already, mostly because of the detention pond that is already in place. The mosquitoes. We know how mosquitoes are in Durant. Think of a detention pond that is not maintained. I've swatted 15 mosquitoes on my legs at one point just from the one detention pond. And they're wanting to put one, a bigger one, that is already holds water back there behind my neighbor's house, directly behind my home. That is going to add a level of danger that I'm more concerned about that detention pond than I am the parking lot for my health. Literally for my health, because of the mosquitoes and the snakes that it's going to cause. And I guess that is it for me. I know y'all are already thinking that you wouldn't want to live there either if you were us, and that's just not something we want to happen, and frankly, it's scary. It's very scary. And I appreciate y'all listening to us today, and that was it for me.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Okay. Thank you. Do what? No. Yeah, I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to table this until next month in an effort to gain additional information, answer some of the questions that have been posed, and to try to form a solidified answer to council.
I will second that motion, but I would like to specify what questions we want answered so that we're not coming back with kind of an open, generic, we need answers to these questions, but what are the questions?
From my understanding, the community has had a lot of questions that are unanswered. To be specific, the allowance of egress on Chuckwaw, how it became C2 in the first place, I think, some questions about, the non-conforming piece, not only how that came to be, if that's appropriate, what can be done. From my understanding, Ms. Knight and Mr. Hamill and others had questions of their own, and requests for documentation, specific requests for documentation. I don't think they've received a response.
In that case, I will second the motion. I think Ms. Barker was writing down questions as you went, and I'm comfortable with that.
I would say that's probably not all inclusive. If the community wants to email, I don't intend to be the spokesperson for everyone.
Sure. And I will say there was a discussion about what promises had been made to prior residents on the prior zonings, things like that. I'm interested in those promises. I will say part of the issue that we run into with any zoning issue is at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what promises people make, especially when they sell the property to somebody else. And that's what we've run into, I think, in this situation, but we still need to have it addressed what promises were made and not kept.
I think from my standpoint, as a commissioner, if our process is creating an issue, I want those identified so we can stop doing that.
So I will second your motion to table.
Thanks.
I will add, as far as Ms. Hamill and Ms. Knight's requests, those both have been filled, unless there's further requests. But for planning, for the questions that they have, if people could send them to planning@durant.org, that would be the place to send those comments to.
So in that, in answering those questions, we need to include that in the packet for council.
Yes, there will be, this item, if it is tabled tonight, it will not go to council in February. It'll come back to you all in February. We can address those questions, and we'll put,
Meaning the answers to those questions will be in the packet for next month, right?
yes,
Okay,
yes.
thanks.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Drew Jackson.
Aye.
Kevin Keener.
Aye. Okay, I'll say for everybody that if you're not familiar with it, the motion was to table this item. So this item will come back to the Planning Commission and be on our agenda next month, which is the
February.
third Tuesday of the month,
I believe it's February 16th.
February 16th. So we will rehear the same case then. And our intent is to have the questions and some history and have just a better picture, documented picture and idea of how we got here and how we move forward from here. So,
If there's any questions, have them send them to planning@durant.org.
if there's any questions, concerns, send the email to planning@durant.org. Do I need to add anything? Okay. Thank everyone for being here and participating, and we'll see you next month.
Yes, you will.
Huh? Okay.
Mr. Keener, are you about to move on? If you were here only on item number 5 and it's your choice to leave, if you go ahead and vacate the room, we will reconvene and we'll talk about the other items on the agenda. Appreciate y'all's comments today. Oh, no problem at all. Thank you, guys.
Danielle? I think there's a couple of members who wanted some water. Do we have some available?
We'll get it.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to item number 4, PC 2021-04. Consideration of approval of rezoning from A1 General Agricultural to R1 Single Family Residential District and a preliminary plat for property located near South 9th and Rodeo Road. Ms. Barker.
Okay, let's see if I figure this out. Maybe. Well. Maybe it's, okay. We're gonna try this. Oh, okay. It is not working, so we're gonna wing it. Okay, so essentially what this is you guys have heard this last month, or it's been longer than a month ago. You heard this last year, I guess it was, and so the applicant has come back. They're requesting an R1 zoning this time with about 85 lots on that. We did get some feedback from the neighborhood and from the adjoining citizens that are in that area. A lot of them just wanted the same letters that they submitted at the previous meeting resubmitted. For this particular project, there's, like I said, about 85 lots. That does meet the standards for the R1 zoning district. They did go through and add in an a secondary emergency access road in there, which does meet the current code for the fire, per the fire marshal. All of staff have signed off on the preliminary plat piece of it, and there's areas of this that they will not be able to use, meaning that some of the lots will have to remain will have to be joined together or some other form of doing that. And there we go. Okay. Oop, went the wrong way. It works now. Okay. Oop. Oops, I messed up. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. There we go. And then there's a sewer line that runs in that area, and obviously we will not let anybody build over the sewer line. And there may be some areas that's going to have to be used as detention and things like that. So those are just a few things that have been discussed. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The applicant is also here, and I'm sure there's some people here that would also like to speak on this as well.
I do have one initial question.
Sure.
The emergency access that is shown on the plat,
Yes.
is that going to be an actual road or just like a gravel drive for emergency vehicles only?
That I am not sure of, to be completely honest with you. I'd have to double check and see what was made. An applicant may know. I'm not sure what the applicant discussed with the fire marshal at that point, but
Okay.
I will let him. But I believe it has to be a paved surface per city ordinances for anything that would be considered a street or a roadway.
So just to clarify, it's not necessarily a full width right of way. It's an emergency access road, so it needs to be able to handle a fire truck, and it does require sealed surface. That's the new rule.
Okay. So it'll be for all intents and purposes, it's a city road. It just
It'll
doesn't
be a
have
full-size road for what you see,
it
the
doesn't-
paved portion.
Okay.
It just won't have the extra right of way like some of our normal
Okay.
roads do.
But I guess my other question leading off of that is it going to be daily use for the people that live there as well?
It's going to be available, and I'm sure some of them will utilize
Okay.
it as their convenience.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Barker? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Mock, do you have anything you'd like to start? Okay.
Okay, if y'all remember the last time I was here, there were some questions that I didn't have answers to. So we decided to table it or remove it off the item, and since then, we've been hard at work on getting some answers for you. Shane and Whitney had a problem with non-conforming to the neighborhood that was there. So we went to an R3 to an R1, which is the least restricted of the residential districts. So we did make that change. It moves the lots to meet or conform to what's already there. So we got that change. And then you mentioned the secondary access that was secured. We have done a study on the sewer line, and we have that documentation that shows that there is utilities that are readily available that would help this project succeed. I think there is a new step here in Durant that all department heads now get to see this before it comes before you guys. And I believe all departments have signed off on it, which took a while to answer their questions. And I will disclose that at this point, the concerns of drainage will be addressed in a full engineering stamped report that will be done, of course, after we get an approval from preliminary plat. So, yeah.
Maybe more than one. It looks like the current drainage, just want to make sure, I've been out there, looked at it,
Yeah.
but just want to make sure that my eyes are not deceiving me. Is that the drainage from this property now, is it going east, southeast?
Yes.
Okay.
There's a pecan bottom there to the east of the property. It's open ag field, and the property drains. It doesn't. It wants to go to the east, and then from there, I believe it goes north.
Okay. And that the study you had for sewer shows it's adequate, or it's going to be upgraded?
It's adequate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've actually got the study, and we have a lot of capacity on that sewer line, so it looks good for multiple developments possibly in the future as well.
Sorry, repeat that. You had a lot of what?
A lot of capacity
Okay.
for future developments as well, maybe even, but yeah, the sewer looks fine. I don't have any problems with that. Water is.
You have the water there.
Is it my water?
Mhm.
Okay, I couldn't remember if it was my water or rural water, but yeah, it's mine. Yes, it is. That's okay. But we were good with engineering on capacity for sewer and water both. As you said, first step's preliminary plat, then he invests in drainage. He's probably gonna lose some lots in the southeast corner for detention. And we will have to, that's the same corner where the sewer line crosses kind of the property. So when he gets that civil engineering done, we'll have a lot more answers for that.
Right.
But you're not gonna waste money on that yet.
Right.
If it's for monitoring, that's fine.
Just to add a question, again, I think one of the major concerns that I remember was the sewer. So I know you did some research and showed that there was plenty of capacity there. Did we explain why the neighborhood has had the issues that would explain that was mentioned before, like, the issues with the manhole, et cetera?
We still have a stormwater problem.
Okay.
And there are times when the stormwater dumps into the sewer, and that's causing the backup. We have a plan in place for ourselves that we're gonna be out there cameraing those lines from his development all the way into the park at Billy Miller's. Now, we haven't begun that yet, but him clearing that land is gonna let us get to that a little easier as well.
Okay,
There's still stormwater concerns, absolutely, and so when it rains.
But you guys are developing a plan
Yeah.
to mitigate that so that it truly is sewer?
It's not a sewer issue, it's a
Okay.
stormwater issue for sure. We believe probably one of those manholes in the creek is busted or cracked. When it rains, it fills up the manhole, then nothing can get down to that spot.
I got you.
So it's backing up. But again, we have an active plan to work on that as well. And I don't know what your timeline is on this. You're out from selling houses if you got steps you gotta take. So we're working on it together to some extent.
That doesn't just happen overnight.
No, he's still got
I think,
space.
Marty, you could probably answer this one too, or you or Danielle, either one. So I think the difference, as I understand it, between this emergency access and the full street, is it just the easements on each side?
Yeah,
Is there any other
it becomes
difference?
just a driveway. There's no utilities running up either side of it. There's no, it's just the, and I don't remember how big this one is.
It's 40 feet.
20 feet?
40.
40 feet, okay. So, but we're not gonna use it for utility easements and right-of-ways. Those will all go up through the other side of it. They'll actually come in from the backside on the sewer and stuff anyway. You know how power's getting in there yet?
There's
They'll probably travel in through, what is it, Pecan? or-
Pecan, I believe, is
yeah.
the main road coming in.
Pecan's the main road. It's a primary road, has been platted with the city for years. You know, it needs to be upgraded because it's gonna have a little more traffic now, but, that's something that is, about a half a block of responsibility we'll have to start maintaining.
My only thought or concern is obviously, it looks like, was there 85 lots
Roughly,
thereabout?
Yeah, we're,
So if we're adding 85 homes, I just want to make sure there was enough room for everybody coming and going.
Sure.
I guess was my thought.
Well, not a lot of options there either, which is not his fault necessarily, but can't cross the railroad track. You're locked into land on two other sides.
Yeah.
It's part of the reason it's shaped like it is. If you had a true emergency where fire department had to have access because there's a car burning in the middle of the other road, you have that. That's what the emergency access is really for.
Good. Thanks.
Any other questions for Mr. Mott?
We have a whole bunch, but you can take your time.
Go.
I have one more question for you. The Willow Road to the west,
okay.
where that, it looks like it turns, but it looks like there's an easement there on the city's part so that could maybe continue. But do you get cut off at the end down there?
Yes.
Is there no way to make?
Right,
Willow
it didn't give
work?
us enough room to get in there.
Okay.
Yeah, we tried that option.
Yeah.
That it? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna do something just a tad bit different before you guys speak. I got some questions for Mr. Cook, and we'll beat him up for you, and then if you would, please, come on up. I know we have had these concerns before, and we've had them again with the letters so far. And so we've got a plan to fix the sewer, and it sounds like from the letters and the neighbors that's typically when they have the sewer problem is when it rains.
Yeah.
So that's understandable.
That's what I've always understood, is the rain really creates the problem.
Okay.
Sewer line, and I mean, I've got the documents here, sewer line running at normal flow is actually very, very low for the capacity that we were looking for, so
Okay.
there's a lot of room left.
So if you can speak to, I know stormwater is somewhat of an issue, or a concern. And so if you can speak to how the development or.
So here's one thing to keep in mind. Right now, stormwater on that property doesn't exist. It's a pasture, right? And so with no engineering, you almost are in worse condition with water adding to the basin than you are with engineering. Because the engineering will require him to slow down the release of that water as opposed to the pre-development as opposed to post-development, right? And so he's actually, by engineering it, gonna make that water release at a slower rate. There will be more of it, but it'll release at a slower rate. And the engineering will help us take water off of that sewer main in the creek, because he's gonna be responsible for his own. And then we've already started cameraing that line. We just can't get to all of it with the equipment that we have. It's running out through a pasture, and you know that. And so, as he starts working this land, we're gonna start gaining access to some areas we haven't got access to in the past. We fully expect, there's no other solution. We know the capacity is there for sewer. It happens when it rains. There's got to be a hole in that line somewhere, or in one of the manholes. And so the only way to fix that is to camera that line all the way back up to the park. And that's our intention, and something we've already begun the process of. Like I said, we just can't get to some of the areas in the pasture right now. So we've also got a new camera coming that'll be more portable, so we could physically walk it if we had to.
Like a remote, you can walk on top
Like
of
a
it?
drone? No, no, really, it's a portable system. We could put it on like a mule or a four-wheeler or something and take it. Right now, we gotta take a van, and we can't take a van out in
Right.
a pasture like that, so.
That'd be good.
So again, we've got to work on that, and we knew about that, but it's a stormwater, and I believe that engineering anything in the neighborhood is going to actually make that better. That's always been my belief, that engineering works.
Okay. I know another concern out there of the neighbors is streets
Mhm.
and the condition of what they have so far. Yeah, the streets there in the
So
neighborhood.
the streets, you have weird triage with streets, right? There's a lot of bad streets, but this street affects 5 people, this street affects 50, this street affects 500, and that helps you determine which street is more important to be paved. They would actually be increasing their odds to come out on a street renovation by increasing the people in the neighborhood. And I hate to sound like that, but that's true. The more cars you have travel over it, the more important it is to get the street done. So, although I can't promise money in the future, wherever that ends up, all I can do is my part. But their streets are in pretty bad shape, or at least a couple of them are. And I could foresee doing something out there when we have more people to do it for. That's just one of those triage conditions you got to think about sometimes.
What about the bridge? I mean, when we're looking at that property, the bridge is the fastest access for most of those houses to town. The other way is gonna take them 10 minutes out of their way versus being right on 9th Street.
I will tell you, I have no idea of plans for that bridge.
I was just gonna say.
I'm not even sure the city thinks they own it. It might be a railroad bridge, it might be a ODOT bridge, it's belonged to a lot of people over the years, and it's literally gonna be millions to replace. And so even though a master plan would show a little different line there, we wouldn't even curl, we'd just go straight all the way over Choctaw, or all the way over 9th to Choctaw. You know, there might be some opportunities to pair with some other partners out there and get that looked at, but that's not in the plans at the moment. Now, there is 2 other ways. You can take rodeo, or you can take industrial back towards the airport, which is not very convenient, and not even everybody knows about it, but physically it is another way.
I will say.
It's out of the way.
That's probably the thing that gives me the biggest pause. I mean, Jay builds nice houses. I mean, they're good houses, no issues with that. We have the second ingress egress, but when I'm looking at it, I'm still looking at the same basic outlet into the city, and the thought of 85 cars, 100 cars, however many cars going over that railroad bridge every morning just makes me cringe, so.
And I don't discount that, I really don't. That's why you guys are on this commission. I can speak from a point of the city and what I know about the bridge and the streets and those things, but determining whether that's the best idea or use for the property or not is kind of up to you. And really, the only thing I hate about the developments, if we don't develop it, it'll never develop. So you got that in mind too, right? I've always been a proponent of people using their property how they wish, and if he can make everything work. But I do understand both sides. But the bridge is not on my schedule, we'll put it that way.
How do we find out whose schedule it is on?
Again, I've actually been doing some research. I'm afraid they're gonna tell me it's mine. So how deep do you wanna dig?
It is a railroad bridge?
Yeah, but they don't claim it, because they don't wanna rebuild it either, to be honest. And so to get somebody to say, yes, that's my bridge, and here's some money, that's the hard part. And we have had it on our radar for years, because trucks get stuck on it and whatever. We just haven't found the right solution yet. But it is what it is.
Stoplight wouldn't, I mean, that would be fine if you wanted to do that. I would put a stoplight somewhere before the bridge so that nobody can cross that.
Yeah.
We're gonna have a major accident there at some point.
Yeah.
When one car comes up this way.
If you will, hang on just a second, I'll have
And
you
you
come
will
up.
anyway.
Yeah. I gotta have you hang on a second, then you come up and speak. I think that's it for me. I had the sewer, storm, traffic, streets, bridge. So those are the things I was wanting you to touch on, because we had that as a discussion last time, concern of the neighborhood, so.
Well, you know, a brilliant plan would be to come across the railroad with a whole nother pathway, but that doesn't make the property usable either. I mean, you can't afford something like that and be able to get out of it. But we got to work with what we have, you know, so. If you need anything else, let me know.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll start with you guys.
I've got a couple questions. Alan Thomas, 2802 Walnut Road. Can I've got pictures of the manhole that far out of the water. Now, I've also got pictures of what comes out of those manholes. If we're saying that there's a manhole down in the creek bed that's backing the water up, I'm not gonna get needles, I'm not gonna get Choctaw napkins, women products coming out of those manhole covers. Something flowing downhill from the Choctaws. So if it's coming from out there in that, field somewhere or creek bed and flowing backwards and pushing up all our water, I shouldn't have that stuff coming down the hill from Choctaw. So, that needs to be addressed. Somebody needs to look at how the flow is, where it starts filling up. Also, we didn't have a lot of these drain issues like this until you guys, or they decided to redo 9th Street. And I think some of the drainage from 9th Street, if you ever go out there when it's raining, it's flooding that hole into that drain pond. Something's getting dumped. There's also a pipe that goes into the railroad. If you go across the bridge and look down on the railroad, when it's really raining, there's water just rushing out of there. So, there's all kinds of drainage problems in that area. My wife and I have moved here 8 years ago. Enjoy that area. I understand progress. But the amount of traffic that we're going to have in and out right next to our house, right next to all our neighbors that lived out there, I don't know that that's helpful. And they're all going to have to come out one day and they're all going to have to go back. So we're going to have rush hour. That's upwards of 160 cars leaving and coming back 2 times a day. I'm ready to move. I mean, I don't want to have that much traffic on one street. I mean, you guys you live in a neighborhood where you've got 4 or 5 different streets people can turn and go. They can't go anywhere. They have to go in and out of that one road. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I'm his better half, but concerned about the emergency, as he calls it, exit that is going to be behind Melba's house. Talking about the drainage, and this would be at the end of Walnut going eastbound. The city's been out, Marty's been out. They've dug, I don't know how deep of a hole that was there. I don't know if that's sewage. I don't know if that's drainage or whatever. Never fixed the problem. My husband and the neighbor were out there watching as they were digging this, trying to figure out what was going on. They said that this road is not going to go over any sewage lines or anything like that, this emergency exit. Okay, well, what is that line? I don't know what that is. So that's a concern I have on that. And I actually sent these in today. You should have got a copy of this that I did.
We did, yes.
As you can see, the emergency exit will come in behind Melba's house. Where does it end up at? At Pecan and at Walnut. If something happened to any of those houses on those corner, which I'm on a corner right there, how can these people get out of this housing addition? The problem is that all he did is, yes, we've got a second street coming out of here, but it comes to the same spot that everybody's coming in and out of. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I do understand, but I'll ask you to understand that it does meet the requirement of the fire marshal. I mean, it does meet ordinance and guidelines, but I do understand what you're saying, but it does meet the requirement.
I mean, that is the major concern right now. I mean, and they say, he's saying that, some people will take this. No, they're not. They're going to go flying down Pecan to get to the housing addition and then turn on whatever street they want to live on. I mean, that's the only concern I'm, concerned about. Also, right now, I look out into a pasture. which I know there's gonna be houses there, you know. But the problem is that those houses are right up next to the property line, and if you know what our property looks like, our lots are huge, you know, compared to the lots that he is building on, which is, a third or a little less. What are the chances of building a fence so we don't have to look at their backyards? Why should we build, you know, when they're building behind us? So that's another concern that we have. Let's see, there's something else. I'm worried about also, we're not talking about just vehicles, we're talking about foot traffic. We're talking about people that are actually gonna be walking through our backyards to get to Choctaw. And don't tell me it won't happen, we've seen it. Okay, very, very concerned about that. Children in the neighborhood coming out of there, walking through our backyards, because we're not gonna put up a stockade fence just because, you know, people are moving around us or whatever. We enjoy our neighbors and stuff. So that's one of the concerns I'm really worried about, is the vehicle and the people. 85 houses is a lot. And even to drop it down less, that's a possibility. I mean, that is something that we might look into, but that's a lot of houses to go in there, and you're piling them up on top of each other. I'm concerned about the houses being in R1. One of the things that they sent me is the about the, are they gonna be rental or are they gonna be owner occupied? Can they become rentals, which can lower our property value? So, that's the situation that we have on that, is that, you know, even though it comes in as an R1, somebody builds a house, what are the possibilities of that person selling it to somebody that has rentals? So that is not, I don't think that is in the covenants at all. I think that's something that needs to be put in there, that these cannot be rentals. And if things don't get better on our streets, which, you know, Marty's brought up about, you know, yes, there's the possibility of getting our streets better. I'm in the corner of Walnut and Pecan. Willow has no guttering, no nothing. All the water from all of that runs straight through our property. I sent pictures of Pecan. That is right beside our house. The flooding, you can barely see the curb on that. And that was just a regular rainfall, okay? That is nothing major. That is just a steady rain. And so that is the flooding that we have in our area compared to, I don't know what else is gonna happen out in the new community. So those are my concerns. Yes, the bridge is major to us. That's the way I go to work every day. I don't wanna leave 10 minutes early. It takes me a long time to do my hair, so I don't wanna do that. So, if we can look at the bridge, if we can look at the roads, the sewer, the drainage, the emergency exit, which comes out to the same road that everybody's coming in on. I know you said it's approved through the fire department or fire codes. I just think it's a waste of a road. I don't think it's gonna be utilized, and I think it's just way to get the housing addition created. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
I'm Carolyn Mabry, 2806 Rodeo Road, and of course, I've heard all their concerns. I won't go over everything again, but my main concern is I know Chuckwaw families, this, talking about the children playing. We've had neighbors that have moved into our area mainly because it's a nice, quiet area that the little girls go across the street to visit each other. Okay, now Pecan Street is going to have more than 80-something cars. Probably, like they said, maybe 160 cars a day. I mean, you are putting a main thoroughfare between two homes or four homes. I mean, I just don't see how this can happen. It's dangerous enough with the bridge like it is, and I just can't even think about all that extra traffic going on the bridge. I know no one wants a housing addition in their neighborhood, but we've had a nice area all of these years. We've appreciated it. We love our neighbors, love our neighborhood. And I just hate to see all of this traffic. I know there's no other way to get out. It is too bad they can't go straight across a railroad track, but this just does not seem right, putting it through a neighborhood. But thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to speak on this particular case? Anyone else? Mr. Cook, I do have a question for you. The street easement on Pecan, is it, do you know what that is? Is it the 60 feet that it's?
The existing streets in that neighborhood, I believe, are 50.
Okay.
Now, we require the new subdivision to give us 60, so there'll be an offset when it meets into that, but I believe that neighborhood was platted with 50-foot streets if you look at that real close.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about what's on the, or what this item entails. It says the agenda item is for rezoning and preliminary plat. Can we separate those into two separate? I'll just tell you, I don't really have a problem with the zoning request. I've got a problem with the plat, mainly because of the egress issue. You know, I mean, I think R1 is probably legitimate. I think it's a much better option that was brought to the table. And I know the fire marshal has approved and streets have approved. I totally understand that, and I'm not negating that decision. But that corner of Walnut and Pecan was the first thing that caught my eye when you're thinking about everybody coming through. I mean, you're looking at 100, 1.9 cars per household in America, so 165 cars-ish. So that's my reason for asking the question is, can these be separated? Because
They can.
I'm just thinking, I'm okay potentially voting on an R1, but I've got heartburn over the plat.
They
So-
can be separated out. You'll just have to make a motion over one or the other. They were both publicized, so you can separate them.
I would recommend maybe you hear Jay Mock's comments on that, because he's done ideas for other external drives.
Yeah.
And there's just not a lot of options. Keep that in mind.
I know, and I think
So the
that
zoning
needs to-
doesn't really matter if he can't plat it because he can't find another driveway.
I totally agree. I think that, I think it is.
But he might incite you on some of the other ideas that he had.
Sure, yeah.
Would you expound on your concern?
So I do think the bridge is an issue, and I know that we've got two other exits, so that doesn't really, there's a way around the bridge, even though we know everybody's gonna use the bridge, so, but to me, with the volume of homes that are gonna be in there, and the two exits being essentially two lots apart from each other, and one being a primary and one being a secondary, I mean, it just seems like a huge bottleneck. And then in the event of an emergency, I think it could be an issue. So, I mean, ideally, we'd love to see it, we'd love to see that second exit all the way on the east side of the property. I know that's not necessarily an option because of the land ownership, but that's just my heart. That's just my gut feeling on it is it's a lot to only be separated by, two lots in between.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't some issue with, width of the street or something like that. I just want to make sure you were talking about bottlenecking.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea of what's going on and what's gonna happen. It may be too much for the current access that's there. But I like the R1.
Mr. Mock, you have any comments you want to add to that or rebut that?
Pecan is 50 feet wide. I don't know how wide the asphalt is now, But I would think that if it is 50 feet wide, that's a pretty big corridor there through there. I think that it would be of interest. I don't know how many years it's going to take to fully develop this out. Be my intent. On a sidetrack, it is our intent to sell the homes, not to rent them.
What about the covenant being put in there that no rent, they could not make a rental, so that anyway?
Yeah. But it is worth at least taking a look at Pecan and seeing what we can do to widen that street to come through from Rodeo Road into the addition. And I would be willing to help in some capacity on doing that. I don't have any other
Thank you.
suggestions other than making it wider.
Yeah, no, it's an oddball piece of property, so it.
And really, the concern would be that 140 feet of Pecan into the addition. If that was to get blocked, well, then they would go around that emergency exit to get to somebody.
Gotcha, thank you.
Yeah, if you would come to the mic, please.
So, back to the drainage. Everything drains downhill to the bottom of Pecan. What we're saying right now, we're gonna build an access road, we're gonna run a road into the property. So you're gonna go straight up into where the housing addition is. So that water has to come back. And this is more for Jake. I'm just wondering, do you have a plan for storm drainage? Because right now it runs on that ravine that sits right there, it all runs out. So is all the water gonna come down?
It will be fully engineered to take care of the water.
Okay.
Most likely it's gonna come off in this corner, so it's gonna continue away from your property.
Yeah, it funnels down our end of the street, and then it goes also down to where Melba's is, which is the other end, which, that's where you guys went and dug up some of the sewer line down on that end,
You'll
so
take
that's,
that water and add in the zone and continue to take it east,
okay.
depending on the engineering.
All right, that's my question.
Which it'll either run on top of the service or like if it has a problem, if it's, or it'd have grade inlet.
The Heritage Edition, I don't know if you're familiar with, it's where Larkspur, well, that's a one entrance road. That's always been a concern to me, but, there's 200 houses in that addition. There was a major problem with flooding, and the city of Durant knows all about that issue. We came in on the second phase at a big expense and built a series of detention ponds that caught all the drainage from the north that used to go right through that property. And I don't believe you guys get any calls anymore. It really helped that the engineering that was done on that property solved the problem. I'm not saying there's not gonna be flooding on a big rain, but the design will be done with we'll take care of the water on our property. Water is not gonna be a problem coming off our property onto you, right? And so if Pecan carries that water on into the property, then the engineers are gonna account for how many CFM of water is coming across that property.
Well, we have water that comes down that willow and then runs across our neighbor's yard.
Yeah, Modern Woodman and then across Jerry's and ours.
Yeah, so it's higher to the west and it's wanting to go.
Right, because
to
there's
the
no
east.
curbs or drainage
Right.
there, it's just free
Right.
running water.
Right, I've got a shed that it just runs underneath and
Yeah.
runs right into that road, so you're gonna have more, that's for more
Right,
drainage.
all that will be taken into account on how big that detention pond would be.
Okay.
Thank you. And just looking at this, I'm making some measurements here I had some thoughts on Pecan, on its width. And it looks like it is, does it have an actual dimension? I didn't blow it up big enough. Well, I'm talking about the actual street, so the actual paved portion of the existing Pecan. So it looks like it's about, let's see here. That's what I was just trying to figure out. Anywhere from 20, I don't know if that, does that have curb or does it just have the gutter, the concrete gutter?
The only area that it
See-
has with the curb is about halfway down Walnut, down Pecan, back to the very back
Okay.
Just barely.
That-
On Melba's, I don't think it goes all the way.
Okay, that's what I was remembering, so Pecan's about,
25.
yeah,
I mean, according to my measurement.
yeah.
What is it?
I show around 25, 26, just what I'm measuring on the computer, but, so.
And I don't know, just for a comparison, I was just looking at it for a comparison, so then you go over to Choctaw Road, and you measure, just white line to white line's about 24. So just to get an idea, it doesn't include the bar ditch or the sides of the road, but that's what I was doing, just to get a mental picture of traffic flow and how it compares to other roads. Also, I'll just point out too, we have typically a natural progression from A1 to R1, and we talk about that's typically the natural step to go through there. But just reading in our ordinance, I thought it was I wanted to point this out just to the commission, and I guess everybody's going to get to hear it. That A1 is the agricultural district, and it is to provide for continued use of land predominantly for agricultural purposes, and then B is to preserve undeveloped areas until they can feasibly be developed at urban standards and with adequate public safeguards of health, safety, and the like. So I just think that's where we're at with in addressing these concerns, and just wanted to share that. But seems like R1 is pointing in the right direction. So those are my thoughts. We have any further discussion?
My name is Ken Daniel. I'm actually the owner of that 24 acres. And we can't develop it as the R1. And I think that we need to just take it out of the city and let me farm on it. I got a lot of pigs and hogs I'd like to take out there and turn loose.
We can do that now.
Can we?
Yeah, you don't have to take it out. Well, yeah, I don't know that you have to take it out of the city for that, since you're ag.
Right.
For pigs, can you have pigs? I think
Nope.
maybe.
Not in city limits.
Yeah. On ag, maybe.
A few goats, maybe a camel or two. Thank you.
Whitney, do you have any wisdom over there?
Nope, wisdom free.
I don't believe it.
I actually said wisdom free, but I like that motive. I like that motto too.
I
So
thought you said not for free.
now, I mean, my problem with this is the bridge. I think R1. I'm not that opposed to R1 for the property's sake, but that bridge, oof, that's what's given me pause here. So that's kind of where I am.
Yeah, I had the same concern, and I don't know that. Well, I have the same concern. They can. I mean, there are two other ways to get out. Also have that option as well. They can go down. One of them calls it industrial, other calls it Gamco Place over to Waldron. I mean, you can get out that way, or you can go down Rodeo Road. So, I mean, you got three options to come and go.
I have just maybe pose a question just for some feedback, to the other members. So, I think everybody has a concern about the bridge. Anybody who's been over the bridge has had a concern for decades. I mean, that's a difficult bridge. That was a difficult bridge when my dad was a young person. So that's obviously a concern, that I think is on everyone's mind. I think the other, aspect that I'm considering is, we have a landowner who's wanting to, convert that to best use. And, we certainly, we generally, promote constructive development. And we have a developer who's met the requirements. And so, I think that lends me to seeing both sides. You know, the question is, where do we land? So just curious if you guys have any, thoughts on, again, we got a developer who's met the requirements that we put forward.
Not everybody at once.
I mean, I'm just gonna repeat myself. I think my concern is the same. I like the R1. I think it's a logical step for what is there. You know, and then hearing Kevin a few minutes ago just mention, you know, with that ag 1 description, and it talks about, you know, development with, I don't even remember what it was, but essentially when
It was good.
Yeah, it was great.
You read that part again?
But essentially when you know, when the infrastructure can handle it, I'm obviously paraphrasing here, but that, you know, it's okay. And I know it's not our duty to talk about, or it's not our duty to develop the infrastructure, but I have a hard time with that, you know, 160, 200 cars a day
Does that
coming through a
include
25-foot
Does that
road.
include even though there are other options? So if they don't want to cross the bridge, they don't have to cross the bridge?
Yeah, I'm actually taking the bridge out of play.
Okay.
My concern is Pecan Street. Yeah, because I do think you can avoid the bridge. I agree with that statement. There are 2 other ways to get out. There's just only one way to get out through Pecan, and that's my biggest hesitation for that volume of a development.
Thanks.
One thing that's, I've also checked just out of curiosity in years past, but that width, and I'm not trying to convince anybody, one way or another, but Pecan being about 25 foot wide, so I mentioned Choctaw. I do know that like First Street is a highway, and you know, from white line to white line is 24 feet. And I mean, that's a highway. So, and it's got a lot more than 100 and something cars a day. So, just watching that, being, you know, watching First Street, you know, I know it doesn't have the shoulder, so I'm not saying they're the same, but, I mean, if it can handle, you know, if it can, I believe that width of a street can handle it. I don't know about, you know, the conditional, not condition, just width. But those are my thoughts. I think Whitney's got something else to share.
I hate to do it because, like I said, Jay build nice houses, but I'm gonna make a motion to deny on the basis of the condition of the area around there. It's just not good enough to support that right now. So I'm gonna make a motion to deny.
Do we have a second?
I have a question maybe for you, Whitney, on your motion. And I don't know that it makes a difference. But back to my question earlier to Danielle is, can we split that into 2 pieces? Like I said, I'm okay with the R1 because I think it's the right step. I'm just not okay with the preliminary plat because I think it's too high of a volume for that area.
May I ask the applicant if they have a preference? If
What's
it's
that?
gonna be denied? If the applicant has a preference, if it's gonna be denied?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a question to the applicant, Mr. Mock. Are there alternate plans that you may be able to develop with that R1 that sort of eases that burden there.
I'm honestly just ready for y'all to make a decision because I've got to get to a birthday party for my 11-year-old. So what's your question was to try to split it up into?
I like the R1. I think the preliminary plat is too much for what's around it right now.
Okay. I would rather not split it up because Mr. Daniel's been gracious enough to allow me time to do a lot of research and spend a lot of money on sewer studies to give the city confidence to tell them that the project that I'm proposing is going to be handled by, the utilities for the city.
Yeah.
So I would rather, with all respect, take it to your recommendation to a council and see what they have to say. And if it's a denial, then we've tried our best. So.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if that helped too much. So I guess we've still got a motion on the floor to deny.
How long they last? How long do they last? They got a time limit, or till we get another motion, or? Okay. Just while we're in this moment, I'll let you guys know that whether it's approved or denied, it will go to city council on their next month agenda. And any vote we take or motion is a recommendation to them. They actually make the final decision. So if you guys want to be a part of that, I really encourage you to be a part of that meeting so you can be heard there as well. So they make the final decision. Whatever we decide is a recommendation to them. So I just wanted to make sure you knew that.
I'm going to second Ms. Kerr's motion to deny.
So we have a motion and a second to deny. Call for a vote, please.
Whitney Kerr.
Aye.
Shane Knight.
Aye.
Drew Jackson.
No.
Kevin Keener.
No. Okay. Thank you all. Do you have something?
Just clarification, are you voting, you voted aye for, again, to deny?
Deny.
You voted no to?
Deny.
Deny, okay.
Voting no on the motion.
Correct, so that means that it'll go to city council as no recommendation from the planning commission.
Yeah, it was a tie.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Just want to be clear.
Item number 2. You got moved around on the agenda, so that's why we're there now. So, all right, consideration PC 2020-27 request approval of replat for property located near Armstrong Road and Roadrunner.
Okay, maybe I'll figure this out this time, maybe, or not. Yeah.
Are you all here for this case? Thank you for patiently waiting.
Okay, we're gonna wing it because we don't need it. Okay, so this one's just simple compared to what we've been through this evening. But so this is a replat. They're wanting to join 3 lots together into one. They essentially are wanting to build their family home on the lot. The only questions that came in as to whether or not this was within city limits. It is indeed in city limits. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. The applicants are also here if you have questions for them as well.
I got all kinds of problems with this. I'm telling you.
Okay, so I said it was going to be
listing them.
easy, and maybe I lied on that one.
No, I'm just kidding.
I do have one question. You guys currently own all 3 lots, right?
They do,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, I thought so.
I'm assuming you didn't get any complaint letters.
No,
Yeah,
no,
any
it was just
compli-
questions as whether if this was actually in city limits or not.
Okay.
So,
We have anyone that wants to speak against this motion? Anyone? If I have to ask 3 times? Anyone?
I make a motion to approve.
I second.
Get a seatbelt in this chair, I about fell out. We have a motion and a second. I think we can make it happen here. Call for a vote, please.
Whitney Kerr.
Aye.
Shane Knight.
Aye.
Kevin Keener.
Aye.
I'm gonna be honest, I thought Drew had just left for the night, so I was like, well.
Thank you all very much. Thank you. Whitney's
It's okay.
slam dunk one, man. You should have seen it. Whoa. All right, item number 3, consideration case PC 2021-03, request approval of a replat, property located near Parco Drive and San Angelo Lane.
Okay, so
Miss
this
Barker.
is a replat. This is for, to join 3 lots into 2 lots, that do meet the standards, and there's no, letters or anything that came in on this one either. The applicant's here if you have questions for either of us.
Okay. Anyone in opposition? Anyone?
You're
Any
for a
questions? I'll entertain a motion if there's no questions.
motion. Move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Whitney Kerr.
Aye.
Shane Knight.
Aye.
Drew Jackson.
Aye.
Kevin Keener.
Aye. Thank you.
Sorry for the wait.
Sorry for the wait.
Oh, man.
Unless you have something else for me, I'm going to probably head out. You picture needing me in the next few items?
I'm sure we can come up with something.
No, come on, come on.
Mobile homes, yeah, we're gonna need you.
Not my job anymore.
Have a good night.
We got one applying to get moved right next to you.
Yeah, well, that's
So
okay.
if you want to be here for that.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Marty.
Yes, sir.
Oh, man. We have a motion to adjourn.
Oh, well done.
Okay, item number 6. Consideration case PC 2020-29, request amendment to language to ordinances 152 and 153, manufactured and mobile home ordinance. Ms. Barker, it's been a while. It's good to see you.
I know, it's been so long. So, as you know, we were talking about the manufactured home ordinance and trying to revamp that. I received a couple comments from you and during the meeting, and then changed those few things. Tom did take a look at this, had no issues with it. If you have any questions, be happy to answer those. I did include the table where it marked out the having that restricted use to allow the CUP process to place manufactured homes in the R1, R2, R3 areas. And then if you have any other questions about the ordinance, I'd be happy to discuss that with you.
I'm sorry to do this. Obviously I was gone to the last meeting. So the last time I was here that we talked about it, we talked about even, in the future creating a particular zone for mobile homes. Was that discussed, or are we sticking with the ability in
So,
Ours.
within the current ordinance, the way it existed, you could place an existing mobile home in the R4, a single mobile home in the R4 zoning district. So the way that I viewed it was, okay, we'll just leave it as R4 for all mobile homes, so you can have it, it's divided up to where you can have it as a manufactured home park, so a little subdivision type things for just manufactured homes, or where you could have it for single mobile homes, manufactured homes. But it would have to meet certain lot requirements before it could be placed, and it would have to be zoned correctly.
Are the lot requirements different than, like,
Yes. If I remember right, without going through and finding it, I believe it was 2.5 acres for a single manufactured home to be placed, or 5 acres-ish for a manufactured home subdivision,
so an R4 would not be put on a city lot?
unless it's 2.5 acres. But then you still have that potential of having spot zoning occurring, so it would just be a rezoning that you'd hear rather than a CUP, which have, our rezonings have a little bit more.
And you're saying the CUP
Process.
for the Rs have been removed?
Correct.
So the only time you could have a mobile home is if you have 2.5 acres. Did I get that right?
Essentially, yes. Yeah, it has to be R4, has to meet the lot size requirements and all that, yes.
I do have a question
Was
for
that
you.
something that was discussed and agreed on? Okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
The 2.5 acres in town would still have to be zoned R4
Correct.
by this board in the city
Correct.
to
Place a mobile.
place the mobile
Yep.
home.
Yep.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. I just want to make sure I was right on that
Yes,
as well.
you are.
Okay.
I don't know that
Which
we
really
voted.
creates a whole nother issue of spot zoning, which further sort of pushes mobile homes out of city limits.
Essentially, it'll be kind of on the periphery, if you
Yeah.
will,
Yeah.
of the city rather than
Yeah.
right in the middle of town kind of thing.
I actually read through this with much enthusiasm. And I didn't have a single comment.
That's
So any other further discussion on that?
Yeah, I've got something here. I'm trying to find it. I've only got 236 pages to look through, and let's
I
see.
warned y'all.
It says I've got my notes here. 152.31. Wherever that has hidden itself.
152.31.
152.31. It's the ordinance number.
Is it the process for considering an application?
Well, it looks like it ought to be. Thank you. My screen went blank. Okay. I did have a question. It was talking about, process of consideration of an applicant. And talks about within the days there. And then in B, so 152.31B. Says approval of an applicant to erect or install a manufactured home in an existing R2 or R3
Yeah, that should have been struck
may
out.
be authorized. So that's what caught my eyes. I was thinking that we were getting it all to
Yeah,
R4.
no,
and
that should have been, that was a scribbler's error, if you will.
Okay. I don't know that I'm necessarily that thorough. I just maybe lucked onto this one here.
Yeah.
Yeah, what would that be? Would it be stricken or?
Yes. Stricken.
Can we strike that?
I mean,
Yes, we can strike that.
And I guess you'd have to get away with strike B1 as well.
There's a lot of language in there that talks about a site, comparing yourself to site-built homes.
Or throw those underneath A, I guess.
Yeah, you could probably put them under A, and that reason I say that is because if I'm not mistaken, in the manufactured home subdivision piece of it, it talks about kind of fitting in a little bit, and then
Yeah.
also with single manufactured homes, there's some language in there about kind of where it's not sticking out like a sore thumb, where it has to have kind of those additional things.
Okay.
Additional items, rather, not things.
I think that was the only note that I had some other notes, but I had answered those questions as we come along through there, and so I think that was it. I think that was the only one that remained.
I'll make a motion to approve as noted.
Does that cover that?
It will, because it will be included, that strike, yes.
Okay.
That's the short answer, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Whitney Kerr? Aye. Shane Knight?
Aye.
Drew Jackson?
I'm gonna abstain since I wasn't here for discussion.
Kevin Keener.
Aye. Item number 7, PC 2021-01. Discussion of the new draft of the comprehensive plan and future land use map.
So, this is for the comprehensive plan and future land use map. I made an error on the agenda, so we can only do discussion on this, which is fine, but, so just kind of have this formal discussion, and then we can go from there. So if there's any comments or questions, be happy to answer them. Essentially what, kind of the comp plan piece of it, the biggest changes that was made was that the tables that was, the action items that were mixed within the entire document was taken out. They were gone through, repeated ones were taken out, and language was added in to the comp plan itself, as well as the action items, to kind of make them a little bit, to where they would meet the current situation that we're in with different partners that we have, and all of that now. And then also, we included where there's some, we call them responsible parties or partners, that could be of help to further that potential action item along. And there's also in their time frame that was a little bit different than what was originally in the comprehensive plan document. The future land use map, that included a 3-mile buffer as well around the city, to kind of look at that piece of it as well.
I'm glad this is only a discussion item because I kind of nerded out on it a little bit. So I've got some comments, and I didn't know how to say these comments without printing out some show and tell stuff. So
I like it.
I made copies for everybody. What's that?
Oh, look at that. I was hoping, because I was like, I can have a pretty good imagination, but I brought my laptop just in case.
Yeah, my iPad doesn't allow me to use the KMZ file in Google Earth for some reason. Unless somebody can show me how to do that. I'm not that technically savvy. So I just had sorry, I'm talking kind of loud. I just had a couple of comments or suggestions.
Okay.
I did like the way that this was put together, just FYI. I thought it was pretty clear. But on one of the sheets where we're looking at this, my top sheet is kind of this red piece near the high school. So just due east of the high school. You can see I've got kind of this odd shaped rectangle, trapezoid, sort of highlighted in deep red.
Mm-hmm.
And the page behind that is what the future land use map that you guys sent out was. So it shows all of that being low density residential all the way up to First Street there.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't see a lot of use for the residential to go all the way to First and then start to branch off towards the highway after that. So my suggestion was just to make sort of that corridor along First Street there, all commercial on both sides. How deep that goes, I don't know. I just drew in an area there.
Okay.
And I'm totally good discussing any of this if y'all have any comments, but.
It's more of just a general, statement. So I like this idea. And I think this idea should continue in a number of other places. One of the examples, I think is, we talked about tonight with Chuckwaw. What we had talked about years ago was that the commercial would have been a block off of Chuckwaw. So you have residential on both sides of the street, and then you have the commercial. If we go through McKinney and some of the more, developed areas than Durant, you very rarely see the split being the roadway between commercial, but this allows some sort of buffer. So to be honest, I think there's a lot of areas that this idea should be applied to, Chuckwall being one of them, but I just thought that might be an easy example since we talked about it.
So my exhibit number 2 is actually, has that.
Sorry,
on
I'm
it.
jumping ahead of you.
No, that's great. So there were 3 other areas that I saw that were just a little bit problematic, or in my opinion, problematic, where we had commercial and residential proposals. So the other piece of stapled paper that I gave you, I have sort of a deep yellow for my suggestions, and then the page behind it is what the proposed was.
Okay.
So in one of those, at the top of that page, you see that long linear triangle. That actually is, if we started at that Chuckwall property that was on the agenda earlier this morning and went all the way over to 49th Street, it makes more sense from a planning standpoint in terms of the community to have that buffer, like Drew's talking about, be a property line between commercial and residential versus a roadway.
That's a better way to put it, thanks.
So my suggestion there is to actually make that strip, you know, quote unquote, in line with Chuckwall there, all the way to the west, and then come back, whatever that, there's a median property line that really already kind of exists among those properties back a couple hundred feet, that in my opinion should stay residential versus turning Chuckwall, Radio Road, and that sort of thing all into commercial to the north. Is that clear as mud? So
I'm with you.
trying
You
to
know, again,
find
just want to reiterate, I think it's more appropriate to use, although it might be more difficult to draw, I think it's more appropriate to use the, divider as property lines off of the street than trying to use streets as the division. To be honest, I think that should be applied throughout this plan. I think the other example, if you look at Exhibit B, if you go to the first page, on the far left, we have the bypass on kind of the bottom right corner.
Mhm.
So I'm looking at this page right here.
yeah.
Okay.
So we have all of this as commercial. I would think that interior portion of that would be another example, where we could have residential. So push the, commercial towards the main corridors and separate via property lines. Shane pointed out, but, we have, what's this addition? I'm blank.
So in that particular edition that I have highlighted where you're talking about is that Sunny Meadows.
Sunny
edition.
Meadows, I couldn't think of it.
So my fear with kind of overlaying all that as commercial and not leaving something like a Sunny Meadows substantial residential addition is from a planning standpoint, we don't want to erode away our interior neighborhoods or our
Right.
quote unquote historic neighborhoods. We don't want to erode those away.
Right. And that was
I
more
know
mixed
that this
use
is
than
a
commercial, by the
suggestion
way.
type map.
Right. And that's why I kind of had some of those areas, like the area you're pointing out there was labeled as mixed use rather than just commercial.
Oh, is it really?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Oh, we may need to get a different color on that then. 'cause
It's
it looks
supposed
like
to be
all commercial.
a dark maroon color, but if you're not, if you can't use the Google, it's probably
Yeah.
not that.
Okay.
I think just,
Okay, well, that may solve that question, because
Right,
it may
right.
be like that, and I just thought it was commercial because it looks the same on my computer screen.
Okay, yeah, that could be it.
Well,
Now,
that may be
did
the same for the other one that I have over here too, then. The,
Let me look.
that, kind of the old downtown neighborhood south of Arkansas,
Let me look.
east of the tile shop. That's a pretty established, medium density,
See, that was
you
over
know,
there.
I hate to use the word historic, but established neighborhood that's part of the original sort of town plat.
I believe that
historically an
area.
established neighborhood.
Historically an established neighborhood,
See
there
if-
you go.
Let's see if I'm in the right area. Right here,
Yeah.
that's mixed residential, so
Oh,
it should
see,
be brown.
okay.
That's where it can be a mix of different residential types.
I'm totally good with that. Okay, I'm sorry.
So it's mixed residential or mixed use like residential and commercial?
so it's just all the residential types.
Okay, well, that's a, my suggestion might be a change in color then.
Can I second that suggestion?
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
So, but we can.
Okay, well, then those two bottom properties on my page there are probably fine. I hated to see those get eroded away into commercial, but
Yeah,
if that's residential and I misunderstood it, I apologize.
Oh, no
I
problem.
will say I've also misunderstood that, and so I probably want a minute, which I know this is just a discussion now, I probably want another minute to look over that, but I think the concern that I had with my misunderstanding is I wouldn't want to have a request come, in a residential area and say, well, I mean, future land use map says it can be commercial.
Right.
So I just wouldn't want to be too liberal with any of the, classifications or designations, for the even mixed commercial and residential or commercial. I wouldn't want to give anybody the thought that that needed to encroach in established neighborhoods, so that was just my general.
Right, and just, we tried to do, well, I tried to do the best I could with what I knew of the town and what I could foresee in the foreseeable future. Now granted, we could easily sit there and come back and update this in a few years, when or if we ever get to that point of approval and being able to, get that done. So, sooner rather than,
Well, then I would like to see it come back next month for potential, put discussion and approval on there so that we can
Okay.
actually maybe approve it, but,
yeah, they're supposed to have
but I
that
do
on there
like
this
the-
time.
I think I'm pretty, my personal vote would be that I'm pretty set on that area, running east and west along that, I'm gonna call it the Choctaw corridor, and then that area over by the high school, along First Avenue, that I think should probably go ahead and be designated as commercial.
Okay.
And again, I realize we use this as a suggestion,
Right, right.
but it does come up in every case that comes before us.
You're right, it
Well,
does.
the future land use map says.
Right.
So I think it's
Right.
something that,
It's not just a
we need to-
suggestion, it's a guideline,
a guideline, yeah, there you go.
so I think it matters.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed, and I was looking through, I thought I took notes on this, but, and it was in the comprehensive plan. And it looked like it was basically a definition for low-density residential.
Okay.
And it said like A1, R1, and R4.
Okay, that wasn't a definition, that was just as I was looking at the future land use types and what zoning, and tying that to a zoning, that way you kinda would have a better idea on some of those zoning types I was talking about.
So we're saying those could be considered low-density.
Right, because you're a lot of times you're not gonna have, and I struggled with that a little, of how to handle that, because we have a lot of ag, but eventually, in the next 20 years, we're not gonna have ag, ultimately. And we're gonna have some probably, but not like we do now. Most of it's gonna be around kind of the airport, that low-density residential is gonna be mostly around the airport where you have to have it. Most of it's probably not gonna be there in the next 30 years. It's gonna be a lot different, I feel like, but I could be wrong. So whenever I was thinking that through a little bit, I was thinking like your low-density residential being like your bigger lots.
Okay.
Not necessarily.
Which would be R4 now, if it's
Right,
it's one
right,
unit, so.
right. So
I saw that,
our-
I know it didn't say definition, but that was my question, is like, what is this?
Right, no, you're
Where's it?
fine.
And you're answering it, so thank you.
Yeah, no, you're fine. That's kind of the way I envisioned it, was having it be to where it's not, and like I said, I struggled with that a little bit, with including the R1 specifically, just because our R1 allows for 70-foot lots. So I kind of struggled with that, but my idea for that was for kind of our larger single-family lots that we allow. That's kind of where my thinking was, so. But I didn't want to exclude it from being low-density residential in R1, because we can't have it, anywhere else other than R1. Or, anyways, but my thought was like larger lots, not necessarily small lots.
Good discussion, good discussion.
So should we say something like, bring it back to us next month? with
Yeah,
these
we
couple of
can-
and if anybody else has any additional modifications, they might suggest to have them to you by in the next 2 weeks or
Yeah,
something,
within the
you
next
know.
couple weeks, yes. That would be fine. Yeah, it was publicized as being considered and all that, but I messed up on the agenda and only had discussion because it was an accident. That's okay. We had a good discussion anyways.
Yeah.
Were you getting off early today, so I'm gonna be able to catch up and all
yes,
that, so. you know what I
yes. Such an early day.
mean?
Yeah, can I suggest a different color on that mixed residential?
Yeah, and see, on this one, even on this, it shows up as the,
Yeah, I can see a slight, but like this, if that's mixed residential.
right, yeah, the mixed use is a little difficult.
But not, I mean,
Yeah,
now
we can
this,
change that mixed use
now
color.
that I understand what you're saying, I see it, I just thought maybe it was,
Yeah, we can change that mixed use color. That's an easy
maybe
way
your
to do that.
opacity was off or something, I didn't know what it was.
Are you gonna make the change and send it out?
Yeah, I'll make that change to the coloring and then the couple others that was discussed tonight, on that Shane pointed out, and then I will get that out. Should be this week. And if there's anything else that you guys have within the next couple weeks, if you can get that to me, I'd appreciate it.
Okay. Ready to go to item number 8? Good. Consider. Email them if you have questions. Planning about it.
Hey, listen, I've already asked, if we're still here at 9 o'clock, I've just asked to straight up be arrested and take.
Consideration case PC 2021-02 request consideration for amendment to language to the ordinance 159 sign regulations.
So, we've had some issues with our sign ordinance. This is yet another ordinance that we've had a lot of issues with. A lot of it is a lot of the discrepancies that have been within it, and we've faced that time and time again. And there's a lot of other little things that was in there that probably didn't make a lot of sense anymore. Some of it made me wonder why it was even there to begin with, but regardless, Mark Hall, the building official, and I went through this for several days, kind of putting it together. Tom Markham had it and looked it over. I didn't receive any comments back from him. He said he had a couple small little things, but he didn't say anything was wrong necessarily with it or any major concerns that he had. So, but I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. And this one does have a consideration part on it, so we can take action so we so choose.
I know that I tried to remember what it was. I didn't have time to get feedback from. I was wanting to get feedback maybe from a sign company, that because I know that we have some times where the sign company or a business wants to put a sign up, and they have to go through the Board of Adjustment.
Yep.
To get approval for that.
Yep.
And I was trying to recall. I couldn't find what that was and if that was addressed in these changes that were made.
Somewhat yes and somewhat no, meaning that depending on the case. The one that we had recently for First United Bank, that one probably would still have to go to for BOA because they wanted a much bigger sign than what was required. The sign sizes really haven't changed that much. We didn't look at that necessarily. We're going to, because within the next couple of years, once we get the comp plan adopted, we're going to be going through all of the entire land use chapter and updating the ordinances. So we didn't want to do a major overhaul on the specific ordinance. We wanted to fix the major problems that we were having. And then once we do the big overhaul of land use, then we'll address all of that at that point in time. Because we talked about doing that, but we just couldn't figure out what is the right size then. And that was, that was the question. And it's kind of depending on the area that you're in. But so that one would still have to go to BOA. Most likely the KTC sign issue would have too. Again, it's just a much bigger sign for that area. And that's usually what they've been, is sign size. And right now, there's nothing we can really do for that. It's usually a hardship that they're putting on themselves. Is I want a bigger sign than what's allowed.
Well, I think I was at a BOA meeting and about on the First United sign, and I think it was, their argument was, hey, I've got a 3-story building. I don't want to put a sign out there this big,
Right,
for this 3-story building. So
right.
I didn't know if we're wanting to get that deep into it, if we wanted some feedback from some sign companies, or just to get their side, or we want to.
Well, and I talked to Mark
That
about
was my
that.
thought. I'm just
Right.
thinking out loud.
I had talked to Mark about that, and he said this problem is if they have any say in it, they're going to want to go as big as whatever it is they possibly can. They want the most bang for the buck. He didn't know anybody that he could really have that conversation with and get some honest feedback. So that's kind of where we landed. And honestly, if we get down that road of whenever we do kind of that big overhaul of the ordinance, then we can start looking at sign sizes. And what I would prefer to do, and usually what we do when it comes to looking at our ordinances, is looking at what other cities are doing, what other cities are allowing, because that's where we're going to find. That's where we're going to find those. Oh, well, they're doing it this size, and we'll take a look at what that is, and see if it makes sense here. So that's kind of what we normally do. We just didn't want to delve that deep in the weeds for this particular pass through.
I do think we need some crackdown on and that was brought up in that BOA, that, some folks just throw a sign up and don't get a permit, and they don't have to go through the Board of Adjustment. They're just not playing by the rules, so.
Yeah, and we do. I mean, because if we catch them doing essentially work without a permit, they can get a $250 fine. So, but catching them is the problem.
Yeah. Those are my thoughts.
I think you already said this, but just to clarify, this initiative was just basically to clean up some issues that you already had, with the expectation that you may do an overhaul later, right?
Yes. It was mainly to fix some of the issues and kind of fix some of the things that we knew that we were dealing with right now. And I'll guarantee you, if we get this passed down the road, we're going to find something within the first week of it and going, oh, well, didn't see that one. Because a lot of it is just really digging through it and working as a permit comes in. We've been getting some different requests that we haven't seen in a long time, that some of this was brought to light literally, but was a few weeks before you guys even saw it. So it's just one of those things with ordinances in general. You just don't know it's a problem until it becomes a problem.
I think something like signs is difficult. I think the basic guidelines like you have, correcting the problems and the antiquated issues that were in here, I think is good in terms of just a general update. Signs are a lot like the architecture of the building. You try to abide by the guidelines of each municipality's ordinances, but there's always something that doesn't fit. And so for that, I feel like that's what the Board of Adjustment is for.
Yes.
We can catch 90% of it in the ordinance, but there's, designs change rapidly. So, and signs with it. So it's one of those things that I don't think you're going to catch it all.
Right, no, there's no
So
way to
I
it.
think the Board of Adjustment is an ideal fallback for that.
Yep.
So. I didn't read every word of this one, but I did give it a glance, and I think it's fine.
I'll entertain a motion. I'll take a glance at a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second. Whitney's not even looking.
I'll be honest, I skimmed this, and now, for whatever reason, I cannot download what you're asking for, so I can't even see what we're looking at, so.
We have a motion and a second. Call for a vote, please.
Whitney Kerr,
Aye.
Shane Knight,
Aye.
Drew Jackson,
Aye.
Kevin Keener.
Aye. Item number 9. Discussion and possible action of the 2021 calendar. for the planning commission. I guess it's a change, you're recommending a change to.
Yes, so, the city manager and staff had a conversation recently, and my understanding is there was some concern that was brought up that, if anything's approved by you guys, sometimes it takes it about a month to get actual approval from city council. So the city manager asked, well, could we maybe move the planning commission to where it's essentially the week prior to, city council, which would be the first week of each month. So that is the proposition to you guys, if we want to move that meeting ahead a week earlier or not.
I know we had talked earlier, and maybe last week, that going to the new system of like having these documents, like instead of getting our packet, it's gonna be uploaded, I think like this one was this time.
It'll actually be different. There's what we're working towards, we haven't gotten there yet, but what we're working towards is having it to where all packets are online, meaning that there will not be me trying to email out PDFs and all that. It'll be automatically updated, automatically uploaded onto the website. It'll be uploaded to where you guys can download it or get emailed it, or however that's gonna work.
So this was my concern. I think we were talking about if we have our meeting on a Tuesday, and I think you said you would have to have, if the council meeting was the Tuesday after, one
Yes.
week later, you have to have your document, your packet for them, their agenda, uploaded by noon on Wednesday.
Correct.
So, I mean, that's my concern, is if there's doing any work on something that we have, I mean, you got a matter of just a couple, a few hours to do it if nothing gets in the way. So that's my
Right.
my concern is the.
That was my concern as well, I know that it's a pain for the applicants to have to wait a month, sometimes 2 months to get permission to do something. We're not gonna slow down growing anytime soon, so I think that waiting period is fairly prudent and pretty consistent with other municipalities south of us, to be honest. But another concern was, would you have time to get it to council? Because if you had an agenda packed like we did tonight, I'm not sure that it could get to council the next, even thinking about it from a commissioner standpoint, I'm not saying you shouldn't do the work.
Right.
You wouldn't be able to get the work done. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But I'm thinking even in terms of tonight, where we had some pretty hefty cases, some with a lot of history, that, personally, when I would leave here, I would want to go talk to some of those council members about what was discussed here tonight before they had their council meeting.
Right.
So being able to get that information to them within a week seems pretty tight.
And it is a little tight, but usually what I do, just so you know, is I'll have a lot of the work done for council whenever you guys get it.
Sure.
So unless there's some big major change, that would be the only significant difference. Or unless if it, so.
What if instead of a week before, it was 2 weeks before council?
So
right now, we're 3 weeks before council.
Okay, so it'd be like the fourth
I'm
week of
just
the
throwing
month,
out a
rather
suggestion,
than. Well, and that can be, so instead of the first week, it would be like the third week of each month, or sorry, the fourth week.
Yep.
Sorry, I can't count my weeks, forgive me.
Yeah.
So it'd be the fourth week of each month.
Does that conflict with anything happening in here? The schedule, is there something else that goes on in here?
Let's see, the only conflict was 5:30 on Mondays, and then DIA the first Tuesday. So,
But if we're looking at the fourth Tuesday of the month,
right, I'm not aware of anything that would be a conflict on the fourth Tuesday. Because our BOA is the fourth Thursday, so it wouldn't be a conflict if we wanted to change it to that.
I'd just echo the comments that have already been said, but I would also add, it's important to me, if we're serving council, that we're able to communicate well with them. The minutes or notes that we have, is our method of doing that. And, having an opportunity to review and make sure that, the intent is communicated accurately and those things, I think is important. So to me, it's a quality, issue, and I don't necessarily want to speed them up.
I will say that I've had, or heard comments, from council members, and it's a good thing, like we have, have it on YouTube, have it where they can see it, where, I heard comments of several council members that actually will go back and watch our meetings. So I think that's fabulous that we've got it where they can go back and, of course, they can have the notes, but they can see all of it and be a part of it actually at any point in time. I guess go back and click on it. So I'm thankful they do that.
I'll comb my hair next time.
Prove it. So I appreciate that.
Do we want
So
to
do you need a motion on that, or was that just discussion?
It was discussion and possibly amend.
Possibly
So
amend.
if you guys want to
Possible
make that
action,
motion to amend that change or leave it as is.
Well, can we propose that change? Or, I mean, are you confident in saying, yeah, that's not gonna conflict with anything else?
And you can even do it, we can make that a motion contingent that there's nothing in the way. If there was, I'm fairly certain someone would have said something, but.
I think we may have, I may be wrong, but so just thinking out loud, we may need to start it like a little bit down the road, just so some of the stuff we're hearing is not, like the folks we've already talked to,
Right, so maybe start at March
we're gonna
rather
have to
than
start it,
February.
Yeah, you might need to give it 90 days or something.
Yeah, something.
Right. Or even, because we don't have anything right now that's for March. We're getting too far out for anything coming in just yet for that. Well, not that we couldn't. Anyways, but we could leave it the same for February and then start it in March potentially even. Or if you guys wanted more time or however you guys wanted to do it, we could certainly do that. But February would be a little bit of a stickler just because of some things that are already kind of, obviously with the item being tabled here tonight, we'd have to find a way of making those people known.
I mean, I might even suggest like start a second quarter, like April or something maybe.
So whatever you want to do.
Starting April 2021, it would be the fourth Tuesday of the month. Or do you think that's too soon?
Is there things at the, I don't know if it matters, but at the city, like that happen at the end of the month, first of the month, that are hectic, that cause a problem, or?
It's always hectic.
It
doesn't really matter at this time of the month anymore. It used to. I mean, I remember there being a time where there's certain times of the month that was a little bit busier, but it just hasn't slowed down. We've had maybe a week that it wasn't quite so hairy, but it's been. Yeah, the only thing I can think of is maybe potential holidays that might interfere with being that fourth week, because that's usually what we face with BOA is certain holidays, but that's at the end of the week. There's always on Thursday. So
Do we want to have on our next agenda, they come back with the dates
Yeah,
and
we can
then
do
make
that.
a motion on that, or?
yeah, we can do just have it as a discussion, leave it as a discussion item, and I can bring back with a recommendation of having it. If you guys are happy, or if you guys are good with that, we can have it as a discussion for the fourth Tuesday.
Fourth Tuesday
Yeah,
of the month.
of each month.
Yeah.
And double check the holidays, and then we can look at that.
Yeah,
Everybody
yeah,
okay
we could
with that?
adjust it a week or so around the holiday, or
Correct.
adjust it a day or two, or whatever that may be.
Right, correct.
Any new business? Are you making a?
No, I don't think we need a motion for that. And if you're gonna bring back the revised
I can do that.
schedule for us to make a determination on next month.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, that's certain. That's not a problem.
I did have a request on new business, just a thought, when you send out, the 300-foot letters.
Yes.
If you could include us, I think that would be helpful, so that when we get phone calls, we have a clue what they're talking about. I
Okay.
know other people are getting letters, I'll get a phone call, and I'll just say, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that's not always received well.
Right, okay.
You get phone calls about this?
You don't?
No, honestly, I've never gotten a single phone call.
I could have given you some this week.
I'm good, I'm good. Well,
Can we
to be
get
fair,
witness
it
number
involved
on
Harold
next year?
Haddock, so, you know, Harold's not gonna mess with me again. He stood up and I was like, oh, no, it's Harold.
Yeah, old Harold knocked on my door one night. About this last week. But anyway. Yeah, I do think that would be very helpful for us to get
Just an
just
email
a
or something.
PDF copy of those letters, because yeah, absolutely.
I think they'd give us some more time to consider too, so.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second.
Any opposition? Opposition, motion carries. Thank you, Chief Hauser.
Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Byron. Thank you.